Leah G. We used to work together at that one grocery store. And there was this one time when, just as my shift was about to end, you paged me over the intercom. So I picked up the phone, answered your page, and asked you what you needed. You then said something like, "Hey, I need you to come to the women's restroom. Someone made a really big mess, and I need you to come here and clean it." And I replied by saying, "Look, I'm off in literally 1 minute. Have the next person clean it." And then you said, "No, come on, just come here and clean it." And then you started to laugh. In my mind, I thought to myself, what's so funny about this? But then I noticed that my shift was officially over. So I clocked out and I said, "Sorry, I'm off." And that was it. But I had always wondered what that was all about. We had worked together for a while now at that point, and we actually even went to the same school. But we never really talked to each other at work or at school. And from what I can remember, you never paged me before that day, after that day, and you never really talked to me again either. And so, this is just a guess, but I think you were trying to get me alone with you in the women's bathroom. And if that's true, then I had no idea you had a thing for me. If you had only paged me a few minutes earlier, I would have showed up and you would have had the opportunity to execute on whatever you had planned. Maryann A. It was pretty obvious to everyone that you had a thing for me. From day one. And you came after me pretty aggressively, but nothing ever worked. To me, it seemed like you were in this really big rush to claim me as yours, but honestly, your approach was all wrong. You came on way too strong, way too soon, and I never really understood why. Because there were so many other guys for you to pick from. Plus, it's not like you had competition from any of the other girls. Seriously, I doubt that Marley was interested, or Rita, or Zenny. I mean, maybe Renelle, but definitely not Rachel because she had a boyfriend at that time. Anyway, another reason why we never got together wasn't because I didn't find you attractive. It was because, and this is going to sound so immature, but someone I knew had a girlfriend with the same name as yours at the same age I was at that time, and I thought to myself, if I get with her, then it's going to look like I'm following in their footsteps. And I didn't want that. And so what I'm trying to say is, if you only had a different first name, and you took things a little bit slower, things might have worked out. But the biggest reason why me and you never got together was because of Rachel T. To this day, you have some of the most attractive eyes that I've ever seen in my life. I think the very first time we ever saw each other was at that mom and pop restaurant named Nikki's. Me and a friend decided to go there because they had a whole bunch of Street Fighter 2 machines, and so we went there to play. I remember when you saw me, you said something like, "Oh, you're cute, yeah, but I like you for grow." And when you said that, I got really scared. I don't know if you noticed, but I went to the machine that was in the deepest corner of the restaurant so that you couldn't see me and I couldn't see you. The reason why I got scared was because you were obviously older than me and you had this bad girl aura to you that was just super attractive. Eventually, I learned that the age difference between us wasn't that big. I think it's just a year. But at that time, I didn't know that. And I don't know what it's like today, but during those times, it was the guy that was older that would go after the girl that was younger, not the other way around. Anyway, about a year later, we crossed paths again because we started to go to the same school. And at some point during the school year, we got together after you, and I think his name was Ben, after you guys broke up. From what I can remember, our relationship didn't last very long. I think it was just a month, maybe even less than that. In any case, there's something that I want you to know. You stole that kiss from me, and when you did, my eyes sealed shut, I couldn't move, and the world around me literally ceased to exist. That kiss was potent. I would even go so far as to classify it as lethal. Since then, I have not experienced a kiss as dangerous as that one. Rochelle R. I'm not convinced that what took place between me and you was just a coincidence. I mean, despite the 4-hour time difference, I would wake up right before I would get your call or your text. And this is while I'm in a deep sleep. I wasn't waking up groggy either. I was waking up fully alert, ready to go. Or how about when I walked into that clothing store? I think this was at Pearl Ridge. And as soon as I walked in, Brenda said, "Okay, Star, I don't know about you, but I still believe." And as she's talking to me, I'm thinking to myself, this is the type of stuff that only happens in movies. But as far as I can tell, there aren't any cameras around. And no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. All of those incidents, including the ones that I haven't talked about, makes it so hard for me not to believe that somehow, some way, we were in sync with each other. You know, I would have never have guessed in a million years that you would have been the one to destroy my world not just once, but twice. And before you did it the second time, at that garden, overlooking the ocean, you crept up behind me, wrapped your arms around my waist, and you kissed me on the back of the neck. I don't know why, but when you did that, my entire being lit up. That feeling, it was so intense. It felt so much better than anything that I've ever experienced, even to this very day. It's unlike anything out there. Growing up, one of the phrases that I would hear women say in movies or in TV shows was, "It makes me feel like electricity's running through my body." And I never understood what they meant until that day. But that phrase, I feel, is extremely inaccurate. Because I've been shocked and electrocuted before, and that stuff hurts. So to me, that phrase is not even close. But it's impossible for me to describe what that felt like with words. After we left the garden, we went to go eat Saimin at Ken's. And while we were there, you were blushing, and you kept asking me, "Why are you looking at me that way?" Well, now you know. At that point in life, everything felt like it was all falling into place. All of the signs that I was seeing were suggesting that this was meant to be. And so, I didn't care what was happening outside of me and you. All I knew was that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. Obviously, that's not how things played out. And after all of this time, I feel like I finally put the pieces of the puzzle together. You could have told me, that you changed your mind and you just decided to work through things instead of leaving me hanging like that. I also realized that Daffy knew all along, but she didn't want to be the one to tell me. My guess is she felt that it was your responsibility and she was waiting for you to do it. We haven't spoken to each other since, and I don't think we're ever going to see or speak to each other ever again. And so I just want you to know that I don't hate you, nor am I mad at you. I sincerely hope that all is well. What I've learned from all of this is, if I can survive that, then I can survive anything. But I really hope that no one has to go through what I went through, because surviving that wasn't easy. From just those few days that I spent with you, it took me years. It literally took me years to recover. Anyway, one of the last things I remember you saying to me before the radio silence kicked in was, "You need to work on your swagger." Well, I wholeheartedly disagree. I just need to be me, because it's other people's responsibility to determine whether or not they want to resonate with what they see. I can see it now. If the lines of communication were open, you would send me a text and it would say, "You're such a smartass." Jellane E. I really believed that you were the one. From very early on in our relationship, from the initial interactions, I knew something very important was taking place. I knew something significant in my life was happening, but I can't explain in words how I knew. All I can say is, I just felt it. It was a feeling. Despite all of the challenges that existed, despite all of the ups and downs that we went through, I never wanted things to end. But you reached a breaking point and decided that it wasn't worth it for you anymore. After having spent well over a decade of my life with you, moving on was a very rough transition. But before it all ended, one of the things you would always say to me was, "You need to stop and smell the flowers." And I never understood what you meant when you said that, and so I would always ask you, "How?" And then you would get really mad at me for even asking the question, and you wouldn't say anything. So I just want you to know that I genuinely did not understand what you meant, and I was asking you to explain it to me so that I can learn, but you never did. Again, this was towards the end of our relationship, and so at that point, explaining it to me was more than likely a lost cause for you. When I look back at those times, I was so dense. Literally zero creativity. It wasn't until we went our separate ways that I finally figured out what you were trying to say. And I learned that there is no how. No one can teach you how. You just do it. Prior to meeting you, there wasn't a lot of compassion or affection in my life. And so that's what attracted me to you. It was how you looked to me on the inside. It was your heart that captured my heart. The physical attraction came after that. And so I am extremely grateful for the compassion and affection you showed me during our relationship. I'm sure that I didn't demonstrate any obvious appreciation for it while we were together, but believe me, I am very appreciative for everything that you did for me. It's unfortunate that I didn't have the capacity to express it to you in a way that you would understand, and so I will always be in your debt. I know you won't accept it, but I'll be paying you back. When and how? Well, You'll find out. One day. The last time we spoke to one another, which was well over a decade now at this point, I was actually a little worried about you. You seemed... how can I say this? Lost. And so, I don't know how much of what I'm about to say is going to help you, but if you haven't done so by now, I would very much like to suggest to you that you stop and smell the flowers. Katie. I don't know your last name and I barely got your first. Brown hair, light complexion, 5'4", 5'5", maybe 5'6". Thin build, Vista Farmers Market, butter lettuce, red Salanova, cinema. If I were to guess, you were probably wondering why. Why didn't I ask for your phone number? And believe me, I was going to, but when I asked you, what do you... And then you said, actually, this is my... After this, I'm going to... I don't know if you noticed my reaction, but once I heard that, I didn't feel like it made sense to ask you for it at that point. Because the distance just wouldn't have worked for me. Now, I realize that there's text messages, video chat, etc., and I used to be all about that. But I've come to realize that when communicating through those platforms, the energy just isn't the same. There's just way too much lost in translation. And so nowadays, I don't really like interacting through a screen. I very much prefer the intimate, instantaneous communication, if you know what I mean. Especially when first starting out, because there's so much that you can learn and say without saying or doing anything. All you have to do is be present, but none of that is possible if you can't immerse yourself in the other person's essence. Much like all of the other girls that I've talked about, I highly doubt that I'll ever see you or talk to you again, and so there's something that I would like you to know. This might be hard for you to believe. Actually, I don't think anyone's going to believe this, but you would have been the first girl that I've ever asked for their phone number. Yohanne E. Out of all of the women that I've interacted with, I feel like you're the only one that I actually chased after. I remember seeing you the year before and thinking to myself, this girl is going to blossom. And when she does, every guy is going to be on her jock. Sure enough, the start of the very next year, you blew up and it seemed like every guy wanted to get with you. I don't know how I managed it, but I was able to get to you before any of the other guys, and so I was your boyfriend for a little while. I remember there was this one time when we were sitting against the side of your house holding hands, and there would be these moments where one of your little sisters would come out to peek and see what we were doing, and as soon as we picked up on that, we would immediately let go of each other's hands. I don't know, nor do I remember why we were trying to hide the fact that we were boyfriend and girlfriend at that point, but like many of the women that came after you, at some point you decided I wasn't for you and you broke up with me. I doubt you were aware, but even after we broke up, I was doing things to try to get back with you. What I did, I'm not going to share here or with anyone. Those details are going to die with me. I'll just say that the things I did weren't obvious, and so you'll have to look back and connect the dots yourself if you're curious. I didn't know that after moving away, years later, we would see each other again. I had moved on with my life, and you were the furthest thing from my mind. At that particular moment in time, I was there to see and reconnect with friends, and so I had no intentions of even talking to you while I was visiting. But the message that I got through the grapevine was, you wanted to see me so that you can just say, quote-unquote high. And so I agreed to it. I saw you, thought nothing of it. You saw me, we exchanged highs, and that was it. At least, that's what I thought. I didn't know that you were going to come back the next day and let me know what you quote-unquote thought of it. And so I feel that it's very accurate for me to say life did a really good job of catching me off guard because I was in no way prepared for what was going to happen in the days that followed. Eventually, I get on the plane to go back home and we both return to our separate lives. But years later, we would run into each other a few more times, and for those encounters, I'll just summarize them as being pretty sour. Despite that, I just want to say that I appreciate every limited moment that I got to spend with you. Those moments, as well as the moments that I shared with the women that I previously mentioned, while all of them ultimately led to emotional trauma and psychological pain, are moments that I could never erase. And even if I could, I wouldn't, because they have all helped to shape the person that is speaking to you today.